Hey directors, today we're going to be talking about parts of the stage and learning, so vocabulary associated with that. So one of the things that I want to emphasize is how important it is to know this vocabulary and to know the technical terms so that you can talk to your designers and your technical directors with ease and not to get lost in communication. So what we're seeing here is a ground plan of a proscenium theater. So one thing to take note is that a proscenium theater usually always has an apron. So that's what we've got going on here. The next thing we want to be aware of is the plaster line. So the plaster line runs from the left to the right of the stage, and it essentially is where the proscenium arch ends and the beginning of the stage floor begins. So to the left here, you notice some squiggly lines. Those are the curtains. And something very important that I want you guys to know about curtains is that as an audience member, you don't want to see what's happening backstage. So as a director and as scenic designers, you guys have to discuss where your masking is appropriate. Just like this scenic designer talked with his director about where their masking was needed. So let's come over here to the side and we're going to talk about some of these elements. So the first thing you notice is the act curtain, which is another way of saying the main drape. So that's something that usually begins a show, ends a show, ends an act, begins an act. Sometimes it's not even used, but something I'd like to make note of is that it's very, very important to be aware of where your act curtain or main drape is, because as a director, when you're directing your actors, saying be in front of the main drape, they want to know that after that drape has gone in, or if you decide to bring it back up, to get behind it. It's a safety precaution that everyone should take and be aware of. So please, directors, be aware of where your act and or main drape is. The next thing we're talking about is the valance. So the valance is essentially a smaller version of a border, which we'll talk about later. And it's a drape that covers up anything that comes onto the first electric. What the big thing about a valance is to know that it essentially is the masking for any kind of technical elements that might be behind it. The next thing you have is a shell, which in theatrical productions it's not too common to have. It's more for acoustics and for musical events like concerts or choirs. So yes, it's important to know where it's located, but it's not important for you to be keenly aware of all the time. The next thing is the border. So again, I mentioned a border when I was talking about valance. The reasons why these things are similar is because they're being used to mask the upper part of the stage. And this covers up whatever's on the second electric or another part of the railings up there that could have scenery flying in and out. So borders are very important to take note of as well when you're talking to your designers about how to ensure that the masking is available to you and them. The next thing is the legs. So the legs, which you'll notice are right here, are very, very important. Especially, again, I go back to saying, if you're an audience member, you don't want to see what's going on back here. So it's always good to know these legs are available to you and can be used. So those legs are what's masking what can be seen back here, the backstage area, because we don't want to take away from what's going on stage. So then again, we have another electric. So electrics are what the lights are hanging to. They literally have the electricity available to them on a railing. So that's what electrics are. The last and final thing we're going to be talking about is the traveler. So the black traveler travels across the stage from left to right and is another masking. And in this case, it seems that the designer decided to have the black traveler so that this dry goods store situation can be hidden and then revealed later. Alright guys, thanks for listening. Please be sure to read your blog post and your assignment. This is a very exciting lesson and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you. Happy directing!